Hello, my name is Amar Gofa, and I'm the owner of Terre Sahel in Bamako. And today we're going to be analyzing our soil, that is our laterite soil, which is here. And the reason for this is to help us determine if our soil is good or bad for specifically compressed stabilized earth bricks, or even to help us understand if there's anything like a good or bad soil, or after the analysis what we can do to amend our soil in order to make it suitable for compressed stabilized earth bricks. I'm sure a lot of people want to understand this because when I started my company in 2019, my primary concern was to understand the kind of soil that I'm dealing with, because based on my research, there are different types of soil, and there are soil that are suitable, there are soil that are not suitable. So you have to try and understand your soil in order to avoid making bad bricks, producing bad bricks for your clients. So without further ado, I think we're going to go straight into the experiment. So the analysis that we're going to do, it's called the decant and stir test. And the reason why we say this is because we're just gonna go, and you can have a jar here. Basically you need few equipment for this test. So you need a bucket filled with water, you need a jar, empty jar, and then you can mark it. We're gonna put our soil up until about, this is laterite soil, by the way. So this is the soil that we're gonna be analyzing. So you're just gonna fill it up to about that point that I've marked. You can see I have like a blue mark that I've drawn on the jar. So you can do that just to understand the size, the volume of the soil that's going into the jar. And then later, after the analysis, you can then understand the distribution of the components, that is the sand, silt and clay in the jar. So you need another bucket that you're going to be using to collect your clay and silt, to stir your clay and silt, and then you need an empty one that you're going to be using to collect your silt and your clay. So what you're going to do first is just to fill up this about halfway. Once you fill up this about halfway, what you want to do now, because this is about 5 centimeters. So say for example, after the experiment we have about 2.5 centimeters we know of sand. We know that our soil contains 50% sand and 50% soil, 50% clay and silt. So once you fill it about halfway, what you want to do now is pour it into this empty bucket. So once you pour it into this empty bucket, the reason why we're doing this is because we want to wash away all the silt and clay, because when you're doing this test, once you fill it up and stir the soil, the larger particles, that is the gravel and the sand, are gonna rest at the bottom very quickly, and then you'll have your silt and your clay at the top. So that's what we're going to be washing away and collecting in one of our container here. So once you have it here, I should have used like a transparent bucket so you can see, but I think you can still understand what I'm trying to do here. So once you have it like this, you're then just gonna pour water into it. Not too much water, but just about enough to actually help you mix the soil very well. So this is what we have here, and what you're gonna do is just use your hand, mix it like really thoroughly. Just like really mix it really well, and you can even feel the amount of sand that you have inside. But what we're doing here, we're just gonna mix and mix. Once you mix, you're just gonna let it settle for about 10 seconds. Once you let it settle for about 10 seconds, you're just gonna bring this jar here, I don't know if you can see, and then wash away your silt and your clay. You can even feel it. So silt and clay are very, very fine actually. So you can pour it and you can always feel it. You can feel whether you have sand or whether you have sand inside, but right now it's very smooth. So we're just washing away our silt and clay. Yeah. Even as I'm doing this now, I can already begin to see the sand at the bottom of the bucket, because the larger particle will be at the bottom while the lighter particle, that is the silt and clay which we are trying to wash away, be at the top. So we're just gonna do this. So from here actually it's just a continuous repetition of the process basically. So you're just gonna pour more water and then mix, 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 mix. That's the reason why we call it the decant and stir, the stir and decant test, because what you're doing essentially is just mixing, mixing and mixing. Once you mix, you let it settle for about 10 seconds and then you're just gonna pour it. So the silt is going. I don't know if you can see in the container very well, but what I have, you know, the sun is starting to, you know, to settle at the bottom, and we are washing away the silt and clay. So you're just gonna repeat this many times. The rule of thumb is for you to stop is when the water is very clean and clear, because silt and clay are usually dusty. So once you don't have silt and clay, the water is gonna start to become a bit clearer and clearer and clearer. So we're just gonna keep on doing this. Yeah, so just to actually, because we're doing this for compressed stabilized earth bricks, right? For compressed stabilized earth bricks, you need about 65% of sand in your soil. That's the ideal amount of sand that you need, and you need not more than 30 to 35% of silt in your soil. So this test is help us to determine the amount of sand, because we are washing away the silt, right, and the clay, and also the amount of sand that is going to be left in the container. So that way we can determine whether our soil is clay or silty or sandy, and based on this analysis then we can add if it is clay, or we can add sand in order to amend our soil basically. So we're just gonna mix, 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 let it settle a bit, and then we're just gonna pour all the silty part and the clay part. Until the water becomes clear. You can actually see the silty part here is very smooth. It's very tiny and very smooth. So you're just gonna keep on doing this. And I can see already that my water is starting to become a bit clearer, because the silt and clay is being decanted and being washed out. And occasionally maybe you'll have this larger particle that you don't need, so you can always throw it aside. So you can mix, mix, and then decant. Mix, and already you can see, if I just come over here, you can already see I'm starting to have more and more sand at the bottom. So once we repeated this enough, about several times, what we're going to end up having is just the sand completely and the gravel left in the bucket. So that way we can then measure the sand. So one more time, maybe. You can do it several times actually. In order for you to be accurate, you can wash it like until you can no longer see any clay or silt inside, and that means your water has to be very clear and clean. So if I can just show you, you know, you can repeat this process like so many times, but I can just show you that what we left is more sandy than silty or clay, because we've washed, it's not completely washed, but we've washed enough amount of sand and clay. So for it to be accurate, you have to wash this several times, but for the sake of experiment and not to have a very long video, so you're just gonna see. Yeah, so this is more sandy. You can even, I don't know, you can hear the sand sound. You can see it's still dirty, but if you wash it several times, maybe 10 to 15 times, you're gonna end up having a very sand and gravel completely. So once you're done washing out all the clay and silt, what you're gonna do is bring your jar, this jar that you've used to measure, and then you can then, I mean, this is not the most effective way, but you can actually collect your sand here. So once you collect your sand, you can add, thankfully I brought more water, so you can always do this. Yeah, so you can still stir, because now you have less soil in your jar, so you can still stir and wash away all the clay and silt until the water is clear. So based on this test, you know, we've started with the jar being filled up until this point, but now we've washed away nearly about, I would say, more than 80% of the silt and clay in this jar that we filled on up to this point initially. So with this way, we can start to understand the amount of sand that we have in the actual soil that we measured here. So based on this, you can start to understand whether your soil is good or bad. So this is about halfway, which is 50% sand. So if you have a soil that has 50% of sand, it's already a good soil that you can just add maybe about 8 to not more than 10% of cement, and you're gonna have like really solid bricks. So this is just a first and initial test, and hopefully in our next video we can then see how we can amend our soil that we've analyzed, how we can add more. If it is a sandy soil, how we can add more clay, or if it is a clay soil, how we can balance it out in order to have like really good bricks. So yeah, thank you very much.